I know it's November, it's smack dab in the middle of fall semester. Exhaustion is starting to settle in. Your academy applications are coming due. So I appreciate you making time, and we're going to make it worth your time tonight. I know there's never enough time in a day, and you're making time for what's important, and it's going to pay off. Trust me, you're going to get a lot out of this. My name is Travis Whittick. I'm an Air Force Academy 2007 grad. I'm here to help you win your congressional nominations, and interviews are the most crucial part of winning your nomination, and we're going to explain why in a minute. But in summary, it's because the selection panel wants to get a good read on your character, and it's very difficult to do so on paper. That's why they want to talk to you. So that's why interviews are so important. You guys probably want this so bad, more than anything, and you've come to the right place. I remember this like it was yesterday, like I was telling you earlier. It was in my fall of my senior year. It was the year 2002, and I was sitting in my congressman's office in suit and tie. My dad had taught me how to tie a tie that morning because I never tied a tie in my life. And my name was called. And I walked into the room, and sitting across the table was a Air Force officer in uniform, a Navy officer in uniform, and an Army officer in uniform. And I sat down, nervous as all get out, and 30 minutes later, it was all a blur, and I walked out of there going, what the heck just happened? What am I about to get myself into? I'm here to help you do much better than I did because I was thoroughly unprepared. The advice telling me you'll do great, just be yourself from friends and former grads is not always good enough. In fact, sometimes that serves you poorly because it makes you think that the status quo is good enough. And the reality is you're in a very competitive situation where, in our estimation, only about 30% of applicants actually get a congressional nomination. It's a rough calculation. It varies based on district. But if that is the case, then just being yourself is not good enough. You're going to need to be equipped with a lot more knowledge than that. And that's what we want to accomplish in the next hour. So first, we're going to do three things overall. First, we're going to give an overview of the nomination process as a whole. We'll fly through that. Second, we'll spend most of our time discussing best strategies on how to ace your interviews. We're going to talk about the questions that are most likely going to be asked, what types of answers are A+ answers, the mindset of someone who's going to crush and ace the interview. And then third, we'll do some live Q&A, just like we always do, okay? Academy Endeavor style, get out a pen and a paper and engage, because we're not going to just give you notes for you to sit back. We're actually going to make you write stuff down so you remember it and learn it better. So that's what we're going to do. I'm asking that you engage, you ask questions, and you get out of it what you put into it. Everything I say in this webinar is based on three things. One, my personal experience going through it myself. Two, coaching other applicants through this process across the country, various districts and various states across the country. And also a book called How to Get into a Service Academy by Michael Singer Dobson, which is probably the best book I've read on this topic. Two caveats before we get started. Okay, one, I'm going to be speaking in general about the congressional districts because there's 435 districts in this country and there's 100 senators. There's no standardization across. There's general themes, but there's not a hard, fast rule. So I just need to caveat that your district might be a little bit different. I'm going to give you what I see as the common theme across the country based on the tradition of doing this. Also, you do not need a congressional nomination for the Coast Guard Academy. So if you're only applying to the Coast Guard Academy, you've come to the wrong place. Hopefully you know that by now. Federal Law, Title 10, Chapter 403. That's why you're all here, believe it or not. Stipulates that a nomination is an academy admissions requirement. The purpose of this law is to ensure that academy applicants are geographically represented across the nation. And they do a pretty good job of it, and I don't see it changing anytime soon, so we're just going to have to go with what we got and maximize your chances of playing within the rules and getting a nomination so you can get your dream. So for starters, talking about an overview, we're gonna dive into an overview of the nomination process as a whole. And one of the most common questions is, how many nominations does a member of Congress give? And the answer is that Title 10 law stipulates that you can have any representative or senator can have 5 nominees from the academy at any given time. So if you do the math, that's 1, usually max 2 vacancies per academy per year. Okay, and here's the deal. Members of Congress can nominate 10 people for every vacancy. So for every open slot, they can nominate 10 people. What are you competing for? You're competing for one of those 10 nominations. That's what you're competing for. That means, and let me be clear, that means 10 per academy. We're talking 10 per USAFA, 10 per for U.S. Naval Academy, 10 per for the Merchant Marine Academy, 10 for West Point. Now, every 4th year, there's 2 vacancies open, which means they can nominate 20 people in that given year, right? Which would put them at 5 total vacancies, 4 years. So it doesn't quite exactly match up, but on average, you should expect 10 per academy per year. So in summary, they're looking to nominate 10 people per academy per year. If 100 people apply for the USAFA nomination from your district, and there's only 10 nominations to give out, then there's a 10% chance. Okay, if 200 people apply for West Point nomination from your district or from your particular senator that you've gone for, that's 10 total nominations, 200 people, that's a 5% chance. In the applications, they have you rank order the academies based on your preference. If your congressman decides to give 2 nominations for one person, that sometimes happens, then the chances are even lower because they're not just giving out 1 nomination per, they're giving out 2, and now it's getting even more competitive. The senators usually don't do that. Congressmen can. Example, we had a client last year. He won a nomination in his congressional district to USAFA and the Naval Academy. In our calculations, on average, you have about a 30% chance to get the nomination. Your statistical likelihood, listen up, is based on 2 things. How many young people apply within your district or state, and how many young people put your number 1 choice as their number 1 choice. So if you live in Maryland and you want to go to the Naval Academy, it is much more competitive for you. Why? People tend to be biased toward where they live. Okay, if you live on the East Coast, perhaps it would be less competitive to go West Coast than to go to the Air Force Academy. Perhaps, depends on the district. The most competitive districts usually have 2 components. First, they have a high military presence. Okay, that makes sense. If dad or mom went to the academy or dad or mom served, you grew up in that environment, you're maybe likely going to consider serving more than the average Joe across the street. So if you live in the Fort Bragg area, or if you live in Fort Hood in Texas, live near Fort Hood in Central Texas, or whatever, if you live near a big base, whether it's Air Force, Marines, doesn't matter, you likely are in a more competitive district or state. Also, the second component is you live in a high socioeconomic area. If your district is in a high socioeconomic area, then likelihood is the higher performing schools, those students are going to be striving for more elite colleges, and the academies are included in that. In contrast, the opposite is also true. If you don't live near a military base, if you are in a lower socioeconomic area, you can assume that perhaps it'll be less competitive. But the point is, regardless, I want you to focus on what you can control today. Tonight, that's what it's about. It's about learning best practices, putting it into action. Information is just information. Let's take what we get, learn from it, and practice it, because that's how you get better. If you don't practice these things and you put these things to use, it doesn't matter. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Now, also, one side note, the Merchant Marine Academy is the only academy where you can apply to other districts within your state. So if you're interested in the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy, your opportunity to get the nomination goes up drastically because you can apply. If you live in Connecticut, you could apply to 6 congressional districts for the Merchant Marine Academy rather than just one. So something to consider if you're able to do that. Another common question we get in the congressional nomination process is, who are the decision makers? By now you should know this, but I'm going to say it anyways. This is one of the most misunderstood aspects of the process. In general, very few congressmen are in that room, if any, anymore. They're not involved in the decision making. It doesn't hurt to know a congressman if you do. I'm not saying to dismiss it completely. If you go to church or go to school with the congressman's daughter, sure, that can help, but in general, it's a merit-based process. They rely on a selection panel. The panel is comprised of retired military officers, academy grads in the local area, maybe even some civilians on the board as well. There's no actual law that stipulates who has to be on this board. The districts alone and the senators alone reach out to their networks and try to get folks on the board that they think would be good. This panel is organized by a congressional staffer who runs that administratively. And so, in essence, the congressman doesn't decide. Usually it's the selection panel that decides. Now, in general, what is the selection panel looking for in an applicant? Well, I'm going to give broad strokes here. I would say 4 things. Write these down. First, a competitive profile. They're looking for people to nominate that have a decent chance of getting accepted. So academics, athletics, extracurricular, community involvement, you need to have a competitive profile on paper, because if you have, let's say, a 990 SAT, you can interview amazing, but your chances of getting the nomination are probably slim to none. In fact, you probably weren't even invited to the interview itself in this round, because they don't want to waste a nomination on somebody that's actually not going to represent their district or state. So competitive profile is number 1. Number 2 is character. Does this person embody the character and core values of a future officer? It's really difficult to assess character on paper. Am I right? They want to get to know you as a person rather than just as a resume. This is why the interview is so important. Number 3, intrinsic motivation to serve. They're looking for people who actually want to serve. No one, and I mean no one, can want this more badly than you. Okay? You have to want this thing, and you have to show it in your tone of voice. You have to speak with passion and enthusiasm and professionalism. They will sniff it out if you're there just because mommy or daddy wants you there. All right? And 4th, they're looking for leaders. They're looking for leadership. Your resume can only show so much. Your resume can only show so much. Leadership positions are great, and they do matter big time. But in the interview specifically, they are assessing, is this person someone future troops would want to follow? All right? Those are the 4 things. Now, you are at the interview stage. Most likely, that's why you're here. If you're a junior or a sophomore and you're just listening in, I want to give you just an overview of how it usually works. It's 3 phases: application, interview, notification. Say it again: application, interview, notification. Those are the 3 phases. Between September and December, you submit your application on the website. All the details are listed. It's submit by the deadline and go based on the specific instructions on the website. Second, the interview phase. That's the interview phase. That's the phase we're in right now. And then third is 2 to 4 weeks after the interview is done, you'll get the wonderful day when you get notified that you got that coveted nomination. Those are the 3 phases. All right, now we're going to talk about the real deal, why you guys are here. And that is how to win in this interview, how to ace your interview. Okay? This is what we believe at Academy Endeavors, and this is what we teach. Interviews win nominations. They're the most important aspect of the nomination. You get to the interview with your application, but you win the nomination with your interview. Why is that? Because so many of you guys that are competing against each other are close when it comes to academics, athletics, extracurricular, community involvement. A lot of you guys have 3.8 or higher. A lot of you guys have 1,200 or 1,300 or 1,400 or higher. Team captains of your sports teams. Last year, West Point, 95% of the applicants were letter winners. 75% were team captains. Okay, so that what actually separates you from the next person, a lot of it is in how you carry yourself in that interview. So we're going to go over 4 things regarding specifically acing your interview. What to expect, your audience, the typical questions, and then we're going to walk through every question and give what an A+ answer might look like. Okay? All right, so what to expect. First off, length. Some of you guys have done ALO, your ALO interview, your BGO interview, your field force rep interview. Those are usually longer interviews. They can last an hour, sometimes an hour and a half, maybe even longer, because they're personal and they really want to get to know you and they have time. Don't expect that these are going to be long and informal interviews. They could be very short, 15 minutes, sometimes 10 minutes even, I've heard. There was a district in Utah, or a senator in Utah, 10-minute interviews. All right. I would expect anywhere between 15 to 45 minutes. No longer. All right. I would expect it to be very formal and to the point. All right. So be ready for them to pepper you with questions. All right. If they're nice and they're informal, great. But at least you're prepared for the worst, just in case it's super intense. All right. Who will interview me? Expect a room of about 2 to 3 interviews. Interviewers do not expect it's going to be 1-to-1. Okay, which is a little bit more intimidating. And these folks could be in uniform. I know they were for me, just like I said earlier. So there's even a small chance that your liaison officer could be on. I'm hearing this could be in the interview. My liaison officer's wife 15 years ago or 20 years ago was in the interview. So that could happen. Don't let it catch you off guard. Hopefully it works in your favor. What should you wear? Unless told otherwise, wear business formal, guys. I'm wearing business casual, believe it or not. You need a tie, you need a coat, slacks, and you need your hair cut, looking like a future military officer, looking like you fit the part. Women, business casual, look professional, hair appropriate. Okay? That is what to expect. Expect these also to be on time. So be early for these interviews. That should go without saying, but if they're on Zoom, sign in, get your microphone and camera all set up. Be ready to go. Be waiting for them and not the reverse. You do not want to start this interview off by them twiddling their thumbs waiting for you when you should have been waiting for them. All right, now let's get into the audience more specifically. I touched on it a little bit earlier. Expect these folks to be in their mid-40s to mid-60s. Okay, and usually they've served. Some of them have done deployments overseas. Okay, expected to be probably more male than female, a typical military environment. Okay, these folks that are volunteering their time, right? They could be with their families, they could be with their job, but they're doing this, volunteering their time, giving up their weekend to be here because they want to give back to their country. So who are these folks tend to be? They've internalized the core values themselves. They know what it feels like to sacrifice for their country. They're looking for sacrificial leaders that will carry the tradition onward. They're old school, you might say. They believe you should do the right thing when no one's looking. They believe you should never leave your comrade behind. They believe in integrity and selflessness and love of country. That means a lot to these people. So when you speak, your stories and your attributes should reflect that. This is a very serious thing. They're choosing the future leaders of our military. They take it seriously, so you should too. And that's the attitude you should bring in to the interview. So I'm actually going to give you right now the 12 fit qualities that all selection panels value. And we're going to go through these one by one. I want you to write them down. We're going to go through all 12 of them. The first one is leadership, and that is the ability to influence others in a positive manner toward a goal. Okay. Leadership. They're looking for leadership. If you pick a story or highlight a personal attribute in your resume and you bring that out and it displays a leadership characteristic, that's going to be a win. Second, character or high ethical standard, the ability to make the most moral, ethical decision under pressure. Okay, when you talk about people that have internalized the core values, one of the core values for the Air Force is integrity first. One of the core values for the Army, is honor. Okay, these run through. It's the same thread that's running through every branch of the military. And so commitment is part of the Navy's core value. I mean, it runs through all of them. All right, so character is huge. Love of country, I said that earlier. Gratitude for your country and a desire to give back. That's number 3. So leadership, character, love of country. 4, selflessness. Service before self. It's another core value of the Air Force. But duty is a value of the Army. Working effectively with others. So when you share your stories should be less pompous and less beating your chest like it's about you. Your stories, extra points for if your stories actually communicate a positive impact that you made on your team or your club or your school or your community. Extra points for that because it fits with the audience and what they're looking for. Number 5 is resilience, the ability to withstand adversity, adjust to a demanding schedule, maintain composure, and still perform at a high level. Number 6, intrinsic motivation to serve. We hit on that earlier. You've demonstrated a desire to serve in the military. You have a track record of demonstrating that desire. You've done things that have proven that, whether you've been involved in Civil Air Patrol or you've gone to summer seminar or you visited the academy or you went to a real operational base and visited. These things show a track record of credible enthusiasm, like we always talk about. Number 7, communication skills. In your delivery, you should have practiced it enough to where you show you have an ability to communicate. Why? Because that's what you're going to do as an officer. You're going to communicate with your future troops. You need to be able to communicate effectively in the interview. Otherwise, how are you going to lead the future troops in our country? Number 8, analytical thinking. You're applying to a STEM school. So analytical thinking, whether it's robotics, whether it's solving a complex problem, these are things that will appeal to your selection panel. Number 9, achiever mindset. You seek a challenge beyond the required amount. You set high standards for your own performance. Okay, one of the core values of the Air Force is excellence in all we do. Number 10, self-awareness. You take responsibility for your actions, you're reflective on past decisions, and you learn from it. Number 11, empathy. Okay, more and more research is coming out that empathy is one of the most important values in a leader. You show interest and concern for the welfare of others. And number 12, this is a growing one that wasn't exactly there years ago, but it's as our society is changing and evolving, diversity and inclusion, a demonstrated ability to work with and lead different types of people. Our military is changing and becoming more and more diverse. If you have any stories that reflect your ability to work with people from different races, ethnicities, genders, then that is going to strike a chord. All right, so we've talked about the audience. We've just shared with you the 12 fit qualities that all selection panels and all academies really value. Now I want to talk to you about best practices. And before I actually share the most common questions, because you never know what these selection panels are going to ask, but I have an idea of what they're probably going to ask because they usually follow the same thread. But I want to tell you best practices before the interview even starts. Okay, so right now the interview hasn't started yet, obviously, so you're still in this pre-interview phase. And so you're submitting your application, you're asking clarifying questions to the staffer, you might be calling the office. What I want to tell you is you are always on parade. You are always being evaluated, whether you know it or not. So you need to win the interview before the interview even begins. Every interaction, email or phone call with your congressional staffer, your ALO, your BGO, your field force rep should be professional and enthusiastic. Use your sirs and ma'ams. Treat the staffer as if they are part of the selection panel, because they just might be, by the way. Example, true story. One of our clients last year, in his congressional office, they couldn't get enough interviewers due to COVID. So the staffer joined the interview. So treat them as if they're a retired colonel, and it'll serve you well. So that's best practice in the pre-interview phase. Now, when it gets to the interview, there's a few things I want to mention to you before the interview even starts. So first, professional appearance. You're going to be graded on your professional appearance before the interview even begins. They're going to make a snap judgment by looking at you. People make snap judgments in the first 7 seconds. Research has proven that. You want to win the first impression. How do you win the first impression? First of all, you're on time. You're early. Second, you have a professional appearance. Third, you greet enthusiastically. All right. Good afternoon, sir, with a smile and a firm handshake. Good afternoon, ma'am. Be confident. And last is posture. They can tell your confidence by your posture. Don't be all slumped over like this. Have a upright posture in the way you're carrying yourself. All right. Every interview begins with a little bit of small talk. Usually people are getting comfortable with each other. And so you want to be comfortable back. You want to smile, connect with the interviewers. This is why when people say be yourself, this is what they're trying to say. They're trying to say connect on an emotional level with the interviewer. Be flexible and be able to go with them. If they small talk, you can small talk a little bit back as long as you maintain your sirs and ma'ams and still stay formal. All right. Now, every interview usually starts with an icebreaker question. They might or might not ask it depending on how much time they have. But the typical icebreaker question could be something like this. Now we're starting to walk through the interview questions, and I'm going to share with you answers that will help. I'm going to share with you A+ answers. All right. So a typical icebreaker question is, tell me about yourself, or walk me through your resume, or give me a little bit of background on who you are before we get started. All of them are icebreaker questions. They're just trying to get going. All right. So here's the key to this question. Don't be long-winded. Keep it to 90 seconds or less. Mix professional and personal. So a little bit of personal. This is where I'm from. This is my hometown. Siblings. This is where my mom and my dad, this is, my mom and my dad do this for a living. And then professional. This is where I go to school. This is what I do. This is, my sports, extracurriculars, and what I do for fun. You're going to have to practice that to get it in under 90 seconds. Like I said, a little bit of personal, start out on the personal side, transition to the professional, like stuff in your resume, and then stop talking. Okay, there'll be other questions. You don't need to ramble. All right, so that's tell me about yourself. Practice that. Now the next question is usually some sort of why question. And you got to remember, they're trying to understand your intrinsic motivation to serve. That's why they're going to ask you a why question. So a why question sounds like this. Why do you want to attend a service academy? That could be a very direct way of asking it. Or what makes you want to apply to service academy? What prompted you to apply to an academy? Or which academy are you interested in and why? Bottom line is they're trying to find out why. Why are you even here today? All right. So for the why question, this is what I want you to know. I want you to start with, when did your desire first begin? When did your desire first begin? It could be sitting on grandpa's lap when you were 5 years old. It could be in high school when you joined Civil Air Patrol. It could be whatever it is. Start there. Start with the first interaction. And then the second thing you talk about is the next steps you took up until present day. So tell it sequentially. So it could start out with sitting on grandpa's lap, and then it could sequentially move to summer seminar. And there might be 2 or 3 data points in between there. You're going to have to practice to say that succinctly, but that gives the interviewer some background on who you are and why you're here that actually makes your decision sensible. Okay, I get it. That makes sense. Then you want to get into and actually answer the question. So the third thing you're going to say after that is you're actually going to give a reason. State clear reasons for why you want to attend. So things that are popular to say here might be something like, I want to grow into a more effective leader. And the academies are the greatest leadership development institutions in the world. Okay, or I want to grow into a person of high moral character, and the academies have world-class character development programs. Or I want a world-class STEM education and to serve, and there's no better place than the service academies. Those are just three that you could possibly say, but you want to state clearly the reasons why you want to attend there. And then, and most importantly, is you want to give a supporting example of why that is true about you, why that reason is true. So you might state your reason, like I just did, but then the supporting example is where you bring that to light. So for example, if you say, I want to grow into a better leader, okay, that's great. But if you stop there, it would sound really awkward. I need more detail. Like, I want to actually get to know you. Why'd you just stop talking? Right? So the supporting example might sound something like this. It might say, you might start off with your personal example and then transition into an academy example. So it might look something like this. Personal example. I have learned a lot as team captain of my cross country team, and then you might give a snippet about the cross country team and what you learned. However, I know I need an academy education in order to grow into a more sacrificial leader. What really draws me to the academy is learning how to follow and then learning how to lead through basic cadet training and recognition up into hopefully being the cadet squadron commander of my Air Force Academy squadron, as an example. You see how I took it as a personal example? I said something specific, team captain of cross country, and then I transitioned to something specific, basic cadet training and recognition at the Air Force Academy. That's just an example, okay? That would be your A+ answer for reason number one, I want to be a better leader. Bottom line, give clear reasons and use supporting examples, okay? Another reason that you can say as one of your reasons, another reason that lands well is your career choice. What do you want to do in the military? That can be a reason why you want to serve. So it is my dream to serve as a cyber operations officer in the Space Force. That's a reason why you want to go to the academy. Now state more specifically why you're interested in cyber operations, personal, and what about the Air Force Academy or any other academy equips you in cyber. All right, so we're reviewing this because your why answer is your most important answer, I believe, in the entire interview. So when did your desire first begin? What were the next steps you took up until present day? Tell it sequentially, and then give clear reasons, 1, 2, and 3. No, you won't have enough time to give more than 3. And then use personal examples that are supporting and academy examples. That's how we teach it. That's what we believe is the A+ answer for that. All right. Then there's going to be probably 1 or 2 character questions. Character questions could look like this. What do the core values mean to you and why? Another character question might be, how would your friends describe you? Or another character question could be, tell me about an ethical dilemma. What did you choose and how did you resolve it? These are all character questions to get to the bottom of what is your core values, what drives you, and how do you make decisions. Okay. So for each of those, there's a different strategy, but I'll just say in general, you want to state attributes about, like for the how would your friends describe you question, you would want to state 2 to 3 attributes about yourself that they say, and then you want to give examples. Don't just say, my friends say I'm funny, my friends say I'm smart, and my friends say I'm athletic. Well, great. I would like an example for each, right? That's how I get to know you better, is through a personal example. So you're going to have to be vulnerable, and you're going to have to be thoughtful to prepare to have an example for each one. And that's what makes it come to life. Now, probably the most amount of preparation that you're going to have before this interview happens is the next part of the interview, which is situational or behavioral questions. These behavioral questions are an invitation to tell a story. All right? And stories, no matter what anybody says, stories are the most persuasive way to communicate your value, and stories are the best way for them to learn who you really are. All right? So typical situational questions could be something like this. Tell me about a time you led a team. Tell me about your greatest failure and how did you respond? What achievement are you most proud of and why? What's the hardest thing you've ever been through and how did you respond? These are all situational questions that are inviting you to tell a story. All right? And there's something that we teach about stories that I wanted to teach you guys tonight with the time we have left. And that is this. When you tell a story, you should strive to put it in the STAR framework. STAR. Situation, task, action, result. Situation, task, action, result. Every single story that you tell in these behavioral or situational questions should fall into that framework. And most importantly, what we find with young people is they forget the R. They tell the story, they tell me everything they did, and then they forget to give the actual result because it's awkward. They feel like they're bragging. I want to hear, you told me for 90 seconds what you did with your football team as the team captain. What actually was the result? Did you win league? Did you win state? What happened? Were you undefeated? How'd you overcome COVID? I want to know the result. Why are you leaving me hanging? This is like a good movie that just stopped in the middle of it. Tell me what the result was, what impact you had on your team, and the lesson you learned from it. That will show a sense of self-awareness, another fit quality that we talked about earlier, and maturity. All right, so that's the situational aspect. That could be the bulk of the interview right there, is you telling stories about yourself. And this is what we believe at Academy Endeavors. If you have 7 good STAR stories, they're like arrows in your quiver. They're like arrows in your quiver. You pull them out, and for almost any question asked, you're like, I got a story for that. Yep, I got a story for that. Yep, got a story for that. That's the point you want to get to. That's what makes you feel confident, is when your stories are refined, they're succinct. That's what another thing the STAR framework does, is it makes you tell your stories in a compact, powerful way. Rather than spending 10 minutes rambling, you're spending 3 minutes and you're only stating everything that matters. Okay? And that no matter what is asked, if you have a story for it, it makes you very nimble, it makes you very agile, and you're not as nervous because you have a story for almost every single question that is asked. All right, now there's going to be potentially a series of future plans questions. This is very common. Okay, so we just went from an intro question, like an icebreaker question, character question, or the why question, excuse me. So we have what we've reviewed so far. An icebreaker question, the why question, character questions, situational questions where you tell stories, and then last, or second to last, I should say, is your future plans question. They might ask you a question like this. What do you want to do in the military and why? And what if you don't get your first choice? What do you plan to do if you don't get accepted? What do you want to major in and why? These are all future plans type questions to get to uncover more about how you're planning your future. So here's the A+ with this series of questions. You want to communicate your backup plans in a way that still gets to the ultimate goal of being an officer. So if I'm interviewing you and I ask, what do you want to do in the military? And what if you don't get your first choice? And you struggle to come up with anything but pilot, then it leads me to believe you want to fly more than you want to serve. And so, excuse me, but I'm 65. I served in Vietnam War, and I don't really care about just having pilots. I want a future officer that's going to lead our country. So, if you want to go to American Airlines, there's the door. Go somewhere else. I want leaders that want to serve in the military. So you're gonna research your backup option. You research backup careers. For what do you plan to do if you don't get accepted? You should be communicating alternate routes that you're pursuing. ROTC, OCS. Those are the big two, really. And you should be talking about it credibly as this is what I'm planning on doing, because the end goal is to serve. Well, if I don't get accepted, I'm going to reapply next year. In the meantime, I'm going to go ROTC because I want to serve that bad. That's what it communicates. All right, so those are your future plans type questions. The concluding questions, you might get a question like this. Make your quick case for why you should get a nomination. Make your case for why we should give you the nomination over the others. That is a very direct question, and what they're asking you to do is summarize what your differentiators are, and you need to be ready for that. So this is what I would do. This is the best practice. Go through that list of 12 attributes that I gave you, the 12 fit qualities, pick 3 of them, and give supporting examples for each one. Pick 3 that you identify yourself with, and give supporting examples for each one. All right. And almost every interview ends with, do you have any questions for me? Or do you have any questions for us? All right. That about wraps up our time. Johnny, do you have any questions for us? And Johnny goes, nope, no questions. And you missed an opportunity to impress. What I want you guys to do is ask thoughtful questions to the interviewers after it's over about them. Read their bios if possible. Ask informed questions. Ask them, did any of you apply to the academy? And if so, why? What did you do in the military? And why did you choose the career field that you did? What was the favorite place you were stationed and why? Did you ever deploy? And what was that experience like? Get to know them as people. That will leave a great taste in their mouth as you end the interview. That you carried yourself well enough to think selflessness, another fit quality, about anything but yourself, about something other than yourself, and if you're going to get the nomination or not. Take it as a learning experience as they're giving their weekend up to interview you, that you're going to at least learn something from them, and you're going to at least get something out of it, even if you don't get the nomination. Make it a good experience. I would also expect, although I've given you the framework for what the typical questions that are asked, I would also expect that you will get a surprise question or two. And that's why I said the best preparation you can do is to know your story, because that will make you agile. There is nobody that's going to be able to give you the exact script for how the whole thing's going to go. What I'm giving you is the general theme for how it's probably going to go. And then you need to be nimble enough to adjust when asked and think on your feet. At the end of the day, I'll even verbally give you what I believe is the scorecard for what most selection panels will use. And that is, at the end of the day, they're going to judge you, I believe, on 7 things: professionalism, intrinsic motivation to serve, character, leadership, planning, teamwork, self-confidence, and communication skills. That's 8. Professionalism, intrinsic motivation to serve, character, leadership, planning, teamwork, self-confidence, and communication skills. So it's not just what you say, it is also how you say it. It's how you carry yourself throughout. To conclude, I did want to say too, we do this professionally for young people. So if there's any parents on the call, or if you wanted to reach out to your parents, we do this. The packages are on our website, and we do mock interview packages where we help you refine your answers, give you a winner's mindset for interviewing, and then do as many mock interviews as it takes to get you ready. So you can review our website, or after this call, you can email us. You have my email address, and we would love to help you. That's what we do all day, every day.